Welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour, your source for all hard rock, heavy metal, new metal, alternative, punk, horror punk, hardcore, rock, and all local bands, with your host, John the Bod, a.k.a. the Bodfather.
This is Jonny Z, and you're listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
The views and opinions of the guest do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of BODS Mayhem Radio Network, its staff, affiliates, or sponsors. Parental discretion is advised. Welcome to BODS Mayhem Radio Network.
Hey everybody, welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour. I am your host, John the Bod, aka the Bodfather. As always, I'm bringing you guys and gals awesome interviews. Today, it's an honor and a very, very huge privilege to have Mr. Jon Zazula, best known to all of us as Jonny Z. Jonny Z, to me, is the godfather of thrash metal, and he has written and will release his book entitled Heavy Tales, The Metal, the Music, the Madness, as lived by Jon Zazula, on Tuesday, October 29th. And also the ebook version of Heavy Tales will be available for pre-order soon, and also the ebook will be released on Black Friday, which will be November 29th of this year. So we talking to Mr. Jonny Z about all this stuff. So, John, man, how's it going?
It's going good. It's a beautiful day here in Orlando.
Oh, you hush. You're in Orlando.
Where to?
I'm in Kentucky, man, and it's...
All right.
So I'd love to have that big heat on me. I don't like the cold at all. No, sir.
I get cold. I thought it was nice in Kentucky.
It's 70s, but at night it's been getting cold, really cold. So So I don't like it that much. So let's talk about you, good sir. You went from living on the streets of the Bronx in New York City to later working on Wall Street and eventually and unexpectedly transitioning into the music business. After hearing Motorhead and Angel Witch, what was it about these bands that led you to want to get into the music business when you could have easily done something else?
Well, I always liked music that had jamming in it. And there were some really great jams during Motorhead, and there were some great jams during Iron Maiden. Not the jams that the Grateful Dead would do or the Allman Brothers would do, but they'd reach out on the guitar to whole new horizons. And so would people like Uli John Roth, etc. And they actually caught my mind. They caught my imagination. I also liked the lighting. I liked the cover of Motorhead's No Sleep Till Hammersmith album. I was just romanced by the whole metal scene.
And you know what? Back then, too, in the 80s, which I loved, absolutely loved the 80s metal, they seemed like they didn't care. It was rebellious versus today in the music industry.
Oh, yeah. It was a revolution then. It was brand new. It had a feeling. You felt like you belonged to something special when you were a metalhead. Great times.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I've got to say this. I've seen so many festivals that it's cool that a lot of us metalheads are like family, even though we don't know each other, but we're still family.
Oh, that's right. That's right. They say the metalhead is the loyalest music fan there is.
Yes,
Once
sir.
you're into metal, always into metal, and that's proven itself. Look at the people buying my old catalog today.
Yes, sir. That is very true. And you have, man alive, you should be very proud of what you have accomplished, because I think what you accomplished was a feat of its own, man. I mean, you broke the barrier on some of the things that is laid out today, especially indie stuff, John.
Well, we wrote the book on being an indie, that's for sure.
That's very true. When did you decide to start maybe putting something together for a book, or who was it that gave you that push? Did Marsha say, you got to do this?
Well, basically, I retired in June of 2018, and I was sitting out here where I am right now, losing my mind, saying, what am I going to do with myself? And I felt like writing a book was the answer to give me something to do. The only thing was I couldn't put the timeline together, and I needed to find someone who could do research of my life and give me something where I could tell the story to as the timeline unfolds. And this fellow, Harold Claros, came to me and wanted to do a Metallica interview. At that time, I said, no way, man, I'm not doing a Metallica interview anymore. But he sort of won me over with his conversation. And I asked him to send me some samples of his writing and his research. And the next thing you knew it, he said he'll do the book with me. I said I'll do the book with him. And what you have a year, 3 months later is Heavy Tales.
What's impressed or excited you, John, the most about putting this book together, if anything, when you started to see that timeline come together of what you accomplished, man?
Well, I'll tell you, the discography at the end of the book says it all. When you see that discography, you say this guy was a madman. And the people that work with him, the few that work with him, were out of their minds too, to put all that out in a year. I mean, think about it. Metallica, Raven, Mercyful Fate, Manowar, Exciter, Testament, Overkill, King's X, Violence, Ace Frehley. I mean, it just didn't stop.
And you went into this actually as putting records out, not really know what you were getting into, and then all of a sudden you were popping out records like crazy.
No idea what we were doing. We basically figured it out by the seat of our pants. You know, we answered those questions that were impossible to answer, but we did it, and we got it right most of the time. We made quite a few mistakes, too, which I say in the book, you know. We didn't get it all right, but we managed to survive and grow under the circumstances that were very adverse.
But here's the thing about this, folks. I want everybody to understand this. What John and them did was by the seat of their pants. They just did. They just went in and did it. Like John said, you know, they didn't get everything right, but they learned from their mistakes. But these albums that they made, these still stand the test of time. That's huge.
Yeah, you know, we produced a soundtrack for your youth, and then it became your adolescence, your growing up years, and now your children and grandchildren are listening to this music.
Yes, sir.
It stood the test of time, and the albums were fantastic, though. I mean, look at those albums we put out. They were amazing. So
crisp, so clear, no bullshit. It was just straightforward, and here you go. That's it.
In your face, metal.
Was it hard to choose between, John, what you wanted to put in the book, or did you have to hold off on some stuff, possibly?
Well, we pretty much laid out the timeline, and then I filled in the timeline with stories pertaining to every little item that I could remember. The problem was I couldn't even remember everything after even having a timeline. If you notice in the book, there's a whole section of the book for those who rocked, who I didn't talk about during the book. And I go into a whole bit about all these other different bands that I didn't talk about during the book. There's probably a lot I could have still written about, but I didn't want the book to be something that was heavy and just took a long time to read. I wanted the book to be entertaining, a real page-turner. I wanted you to get into it and want to know what's happening next all the time. And I think I managed to accomplish that in this book.
Do you have possibly, and you can say yes or no to this, but do you have any chapters that stand out more to you in the book right now, possibly? I mean, I know this changes from every time you glimpse over it, you talk about it, but do you have any that stand out for you that's your favorite?
Well, I got to tell you, I love the story about how I got myself into the lives of the band Manowar and how I went in there as a person who was going to do a write-up for a magazine as an independent writer, and ended up walking out with their album Into Glory Ride on Megaforce Records. I think that turned out to be a great story, and how they signed the contract in blood to Megaforce.
Oh, wow.
You know? Great stuff.
Yeah. That's what you had to do back in the day, folks. You had to get in any way, any means necessary. How crucial was it to share a little glimpse of your career in music with this book?
Well, I don't know how crucial it is, but it was important for me to get the story out the best I could lay it out before others ruin it. There's a lot of stories about me, but they're not all correct. And I just wanted to set some kind of timeline to it and make some semblance of it. So if anybody wanted to know what I was about, you could pretty much get an idea from this book. It pretty much is a brutally honest story and depiction of where my head's at.
You know, I'm not saying this just because you're on the show, but I have actually been a big fan of yours for what you did for all these bands and creating Megaforce Records, and plus you had Rock and Roll Heaven. I think what you did, to me, honestly, other folks should be breaking their damn necks to help these bands out just like you did. If you're a true passionate lover of music like that, we need more people like Jonny Z out there.
Well, the truth is, if you're going to be a label or you're going to help a young band out, make sure you have all the ammunition you need to make it happen, which means you have to have a good PR person. You have to have a good radio person. You have to have a good marketing person. You got to have a person who does social media well and really hard. You know, you need people that are great at this, not just people you bring on because they're affordable and they'll give you some kind of stuff. Some kind of stuff isn't what you need. You need the best of what you can get. And unfortunately, nobody's really doing that right now. Some of the bigger labels are because they can afford it, but the little indies are really having a hard time breaking out. I'm seeing that.
John, what was it for you to want to sign a band or take a chance on them at the time Megaforce Records was about, man? What was it that had to say, okay, yeah, I want to sign this band or give them a chance?
Well, first of all, they had to be revolutionary in their sound. Number two, they had to be great. And number three, they had to make my hair stand up on my arm. And if they could do those three things, the odds are I would sign them to Megaforce.
Did you have that one band that you wanted, but you just couldn't get?
No, I never really had a terrible problem like that. I may have wanted Exodus, but not enough to go fighting for it at the time. And pretty much every band I ever wanted on Megaforce was on Megaforce. I have some regrets about bands I turned down as manager. You know, we were asked to manage Pantera. We were asked to manage Rob Zombie when it was White Zombie. And because of our commitments with Anthrax at the time, which we used, and Ministry, which was amazing, we didn't go forward with those bands. And I think I would have liked to have been part of those careers very much.
Writing this book, has this been a personal growth for you as far as writing and putting all this together?
No, it just flowed. I'm a storyteller, and I just told stories. I used the pen instead of my mouth. And Harold Claros made sure they all got down on the paper and into the book. So no great revelations, John, no great revelations. I just sat down to do a job, and I'm very happy with the way it came out, and I'm very happy with the way it's being received by the public.
Oh, yeah, this is great. I'm glad that people is very excited about this because I'm not the only one who's been talking about it. Me and my colleagues at work have been talking about it as well, so you definitely have the metal side support from us, my friend, for sure.
Great. That's great.
So how much of a supporter was Marsha when you wanted to start Megaforce Records and begin recording albums and things like that? How big of a support was she for you, man?
Well, it's throughout the entire book. Marsha was my angel. You know, she let me live my life 6 months in debt. I was 6 months behind with all my bills, my mortgage, my car payments. I couldn't pay my bills for the records I was selling at the flea market. I mean, things were really bad for quite a while. We couldn't eat. I came home from the Anvil show at Route 9, at the Route 18 the Route 18 flea market, and the power was turned off in my home after selling out a show.
Oh,
Here
wow.
I am having the glory of a show, going home to no power, with my kids living there and a babysitter. So it was a bitch. The whole thing was a bitch. But, you know, if you believe, you can make it happen. And that's what the book was about. Just how much you have to believe and how you can make it happen. And I used the phrase, nothing to it but to do it, throughout the book.
I thought this was absolutely brilliant, man. You owned a flea market called Rock and Roll Heaven, and people came from all around the world, up to 500 miles, to purchase metal, speed metal, and thrash metal vinyls, and just to hang out with other metalheads. How big of an impact do you think this store had on people after you look back on it now, wishing that we had something like this today?
Well, I think you may have it today, but they may not be all mecha stores, metal stores. You know, they have everything because you have to have everything to survive today. Rock and Roll Heaven was predominantly a heavy metal mecca. I think the store I'm going to on Sunday in New Jersey, Vintage Vinyl, for an in-store, is going to be a store where you see plenty of metal on the shelves. I don't know to what extreme the store owner went to buy their metal. I mean, I made sure every little thing was in my store, no matter how hard it was to find. I found it in Europe and Japan and France and everywhere in England, and I got it into the store. I don't know how dedicated other buyers are these days. I can't speak them.
Right.
But I hope there's a few around that are like us.
When Randy Rhoads passed away and people were gathering at Rock and Roll Heaven to mourn his passing, did it sink into you then we may have something even more special beyond music in itself here at this place?
Well, I realized how important it is and was to have, again, a metal mecca, a place where a metalhead could go and feel what it was like in those 80s to be a metalhead. You know, it was something new. It wasn't like today, 80,000 people going to a Slayer concert. Slayer were playing in the basement of the Funhouse with Metal Joe and Rock and Ray and the Old Bridge Militia at that time. Just think about where things were. Things were very different then.
I want to know about a band that I'm very, very interested in, and I like their music. You got Raven on Megaforce Records. Let's talk about them a little bit. The first time you heard Raven, what went through your head, man?
Well, Raven blew my mind. Raven's first two albums were, to me, two of the best albums that depicted the new wave of British heavy metal. And All for One is another great album. And Live at the Inferno was another great album. I was just madly in love with Raven. I still love Raven. I think they're one of the best bands out there today.
Now, you wanted to start a heavy metal mecca in the Northeast by bringing Canadian metal rockers Anvil over to a show. How was that, man? Did you think you got that on the road for that?
It was the first time something at this level was done by some independent guy running a flea market in New Jersey. You know what I mean? And what it did was it gave me the bug to go and do other shows after that show. It made me want to bring in more and more bands, which set the fire for everything that happened after that.
What about the metal festivals that you see today? Do you think that they are doing it justice?
I think the metal festivals today are unbelievable. Wacken and the festivals that you have, Bloodstock and Hard and Heavy, all the festivals you have all over Europe are really just amazing, amazing events that bring the metalhead together from all over the world. I think they're wonderful, and it gives the band a chance to be seen in their total splendor on a big stage, the way it should be seen, with a big audience, very much into the metal scene of today, especially Europe.
Yeah, Europe's got a lot of great metal over there, and their festivals are unbelievable.
They had Monsters of Rock, Castle Donington. They had festivals all over the world. But the United States, they had their one every blue moon, the Oz Festival, Woodstock, but in Europe it's every year, now 20 a year.
And to them over there, it's not just a festival. I mean, it's a big mecca. I mean, it's a huge ordeal over there. It's not like a couple of days. It's like a week sometimes for these festivals.
Well, what you have is the bands are playing at the festival, and then they break up and they play in the towns around the festivals.
And that's a lot of revenue for those folks, too, coming into those towns.
It's an awful lot of revenue. It's a big business. The heavy metal is now big business worldwide. Not so much in America, but it's getting there.
I just got my one Metallica question for you. Your friend, he kind of poked you to finally take a listen to No Life Till Leather. When you first heard this, man, what did you think? And are you glad that you finally listened to it? That's the main thing.
Well, that's a funny question. The reality of life is, when I heard the album, I knew it was the answer to the new wave of American heavy metal. I knew there was nothing like it in America, and this was the answer. I saw it as being one of the biggest things to ever hit America, and I fell in love with it that second. The rest is history. You know the story. If you read the book, you'll get the story. Sure.
Yeah, for sure. What about Cliff? I just have one cool question about Cliff. Talking to him, man, how was having a conversation with him? Because he seemed like he was so down to earth and very influential on things.
Cliff was a very down-to-earth guy. He was you and me. He was everybody. There was no ego, but he was smart and cunning. And he played the bass and loved the bass like a motherfucker, man. He was a great bass player. And I will just say one thing. He was the nicest guy in the group, and he was the coolest guy in the group.
I can definitely understand that. I can understand that. Jonny, where do you think these bands would be today without Megaforce Records? Do you think it would be a different outcome for them?
I don't know. I'm sure that we helped an awful lot. Thank God we were there to do it. You know what I mean, John?
Sure. Oh, yeah.
There, and it was like catching a wave and being a champion surfer. We just rode those waves in one by one, and each one was a great ride, you know? That's the best way to describe it.
Folks, if you don't know what Megaforce Records have done in bands, please get out and research it. It's at the tip of your fingers, but they signed Metallica, Anthrax, Testament, Mercyful Fate, Raven, Overkill, Exciter, Stormtroopers of Death, Method of Destruction, Ace Frehley, when he put out Frehley's Comet, which is a fucking great album. King's X, the Mighty King's X, they're still playing today. Ministry, Mindfunk, Newt's World, Warren Haynes, Disco Biscuits, and others. So, trust me, folks, what Jonny Z has done for the music world, I mean, this guy he has a huge part of metal history involved in this. So,
thank you, John. That was nice to hear. Now I got to live with that.
Good. You should. Folks, you want to get out and pick up Jonny Z's new book that's getting ready to come out here, entitled Heavy Tales, The Metal, the Music, the Madness as Lived by Jon Zazula, on Tuesday, October 29th. You want to pick that up. So, John, how can folks pick this book up, see you, tour dates, whatever you're going to do with all this? How can they do that, good sir?
Well, first of all, the book is not going to be available in stores. It's only available online. That's the way it's going to be. So if you want the book, you got to go to Amazon, or you got to go to BarnesandNobles.com to get the book, or JonZazula.com, where I'll send you a signed copy made out to you personally. You could do that also. And those are the three main ways. Again, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, JonZazula.com, and that's Jon. So, guys, that's the story. I will have a in-store October 26th at Vintage Vinyl in Fords, New Jersey, and on the 24th, I'm in New York at the Cutting Room from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock at night with bands Head Motor and Rockin' Ray and Metal Joe will be there DJing from the Old Bridge Militia. It's going to be a great night. So listen, thank you very much, John. It was a pleasure.
Yes, sir. Before I let you go, would you care to do a promo for the show right quick?
Sure. This is Jonny Z, and you're listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Everybody stick around. We got some great stuff coming up. You only hear these interviews right here on BODS Mayhem Hour and BODS Mayhem Radio Network. Please get out, check out our Facebook page. It has our podcast link, YouTube link, and also subscribe to our YouTube link, because that's where you'll catch anything and everything for BODS Mayhem Hour, and plus our podcast link. And also, please, folks, get out and pick up this album, not album, but book. I'm so used to saying albums. Get online and pick up this book from Jonny Z. You will not be disappointed, because I cannot wait to get mine and start reading on it even more. So, Jonny, again, thank you so much for what you guys have done.
All right, man. Thank you. Have a good evening.
You're listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.